Welcome to the Curate for Women Network. Welcome back if you've been here before. I am your host, Victoria Armstrong, and today we are with the wonderful Adonica Pelichet Duggan.
Hey friend, how are you?
Hi, Adonica. How are you?
You know, living the dream.
Oh,
that's my standard response.
Come on, living the dream. What does that mean?
I think it means like big gratitude for this life, right? Big gratitude for having the opportunity to live a life that I feel has a lot of great things going on in it.
And substance.
Yeah.
Because you definitely live a life of substance.
I hope so.
Which we are going to dive into.
All right.
I'm excited. Okay, so recently I've been starting every episode with a word. And then you tell me what comes to mind when you hear this word.
Okay.
Okay. So what comes to mind when you hear the word equity?
Everyone having what they need.
Break that down.
You know, my work in education is about making sure that every child has what they need to be successful. And for me, that's the definition of equity. That doesn't mean that everybody has the same thing, but that means that everyone has what they need. You know, it's about the individual and how we serve the individual.
Yes. Okay, so Adonica is the CEO of Baton Rouge Alliance.
Yes, Baton Rouge Alliance for students. We always
Baton Rouge Alliance for students. Tell me what is Baton Rouge Alliance for students, and what is your overall mission?
Yeah, my overall mission is that every child in Baton Rouge is well educated, right? We are an education advocacy organization. We're a nonprofit, and we do a lot of things to help support families and students and make sure that their experiences are the ones that prepare them for the lives that we want for them.
Mm-hmm. So you do a lot of really, really good work in the city and also across the nation. And so I want to talk about 3 of your initiatives specifically. The first being the Baton Rouge Youth Voice Initiative. I thought that initiative was very interesting.
Sure.
Change makers, and also education as a civil right.
Okay.
So give me an elevator pitch of the 3 of those.
So the Baton Rouge Youth Voice Initiative came out of the fact that I live with 4 teenagers who have very strong opinions about everything in my life. And as you have seen today, you spent some time with me and my daughter, so you know that, right?
I love them.
They have very strong opinions. And, you know, I feel like sometimes in the conversation around education, we don't listen to our most valuable stakeholders. And so we did an initiative last year where we partnered with the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, and we went around to different places in the community to ask students what they felt about their education experience. You know, hearing from kids in their own words, you know, how they were experiencing schools post-pandemic, what they were worried about, what their dreams for their futures were. You know, that was really powerful work. And so we're currently in the process of going out and surveying kids again this year. And, you know, we want to hear from them again a year later. And it's a continuing project because we think it's really important that if we're going to address the needs of kids, that we listen to what they have to say. Teenagers know what they need. They, you know, I feel like even young kids can tell you in different ways what they need. And you know that, right? As a mom, they're very clear about their needs, right? And so I think that, you know, like it's very important for us as people who are trying to get it right for kids in education that we listen to what they have to say. Our Changemakers program is about creating informed cocktail party talkers, is what I say. I want to create the well, actually people. And so I felt like when I started doing this work in education advocacy that there were very few people in Baton Rouge who really understood what was happening with public education. So I would go to parties and friends would be like, so tell me again what you do. And so we started this leadership program where we take 25 leaders who are working in various sectors, and we show them what's going on with public education through school tours, through meetings with experts, and then we take them on a visit to another city to learn about how another city is winning for kids. And I'm really excited that we are currently sourcing our 6th cohort. We've had over 120 community leaders go through this program. So that's like super, super powerful for me as like, you know, this very small idea. Like I jokingly say my dad says even a broken clock is right twice a day. Like this was my once with that day. And so, you know, I feel like that's a powerful program that we lead in our organization. And then
I'm going to interject and pause just for a second.
Yeah.
Because I love the Changemakers cohort. And I want you to explain, like, why is this important for community leaders and stakeholders, whether you are a parent or not? And why is this important, especially for community leaders who are parents?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that I have a recognition of is that everybody in our city has a responsibility to make sure that all of our children are well educated. My kids are going to be well educated regardless, and your kids are going to be well educated regardless, because we're people who know how to advocate for what our kids need. But the rest of us have a responsibility to every child in this city. And if you don't know what's happening in schools that don't look like the one that your child attends, you don't know how to show up and demand better, or how to make sure that this teacher in this different part of town has the resources that they need, or understand what the experience looks like that's different from your own, right? And so I think that as community leaders, regardless of the choices that we make for our own children or whether we have our own children, we all have a responsibility, because if we don't get public education right in this city, our city is not going to win. And so for me, that's like, everybody's got a role in this. Like, everybody's got something to do. You might not have the same role as me, but you have something to do. And with Changemakers, we try to help people see themselves in the change that we're trying to accomplish in the city. So whether that's writing a letter to somebody, whether that's showing up at a school board meeting, whether that's, volunteering to read to kids, whether that's, serving as volunteers in public school, whatever it looks like, every one of us has a role in education in this city.
Sure. Yes. Ooh, love that. All right. So last one, education as a civil right.
Yeah, I was like, what was the third one? I can't take multiple stuff instructions. No, education as a civil right, we started that in my previous organization during my time at New Schools for Baton Rouge, and it was the anniversary of Brown v. Board of Education. And, I really wanted to have a conversation in our city about whether or not we felt like we had lived up to the promise of Brown v. Board of Education, and whether or not we felt like schools were better for kids today than they were back then, right? And so it's an annual event. Last year we moved it to Black History Month, and so we're going to continue to do it in that way. We did really cool bus tours, but really it's about coming together and having a conversation about how we deliver on the promise of a great education for every kid in our city.
So that is very interesting, the thought that education is, in fact, a civil right. I remember attending one of these events that you had, and it was a very powerful event, because I don't think that people actually think about education as a civil right. So when you think about the history of education in America as it concerns Black people of color, do you ever get discouraged advocating in this space, feeling like this could potentially be an uphill battle for you?
Yeah, okay, so, I'm an emotional girl, so let's see how many times I'm going to cry today. But I will say this. I think about my favorite quote. One of my favorite quotes comes from the book Untamed. And it's by Glennon Doyle, and she says, "Where is the pain in the world that you can't bear? Sit in it. That's the thing that you were born to change," right? And for everybody, the pain that they can't bear in the world is different. And for me, the pain that I can't bear in the world is kids not being educated. Like, I feel like we have limitless potential when we are born, and it's up to the adults in kids' lives to make sure that they reach that. And that is a big task. And, I think the history of education in this country around race, and particularly in this city, so much of what we do around education in this city is driven by the legacy of the longest running desegregation case in the history of the country.
Yes.
And so, certainly the ways that we serve kids, the ways that we serve communities, all of this is wrapped up in the racial history of this city and of this country. And it's discouraging, but it also means there's so much potential to get it right.
Yeah, I am currently in a cohort called Urban Leadership Development Institute. It is phenomenal.
Yeah.
The very first class, I'd say, had us to revisit the Black history of Baton Rouge. And so as it concerns education, I kind of want you to dive into that with me.
Yeah.
During that whole Jim Crow era, when Black people were once again stripped of their rights to have the things that we need. Can you talk about the history of education as it concerns Black people?
For me, my story of how I kind of arrived in this work is very personal, and I come from a family of educators and could have, I feel like I wanted really badly to escape that as being my path in the world, but I feel like whatever you're wired for calls you home, right?
Yes.
I think about my own grandmother who moved to Baton Rouge to go to McKinley High School. She lived with relatives because that was the only place that if you were a Black person during her lifetime, you could go to high school. And I think about, my own experience with then living on the other side of town and being one of those kids who was bussed into, during the period where we were busing kids across town to create this racial balance. And I was in the gifted program and lived in the southern part of the parish and was bused into McKinley to go to high school in this amazing, historically Black school.
Wow. What year was that?
Now, here you go.
Oh,
So I graduated from high school in 1995.
Okay. So, you look amazing.
Thank you. I'm just teasing. No. But, I think about people of my generation in the 90s experienced a lot of forced busing. There was a lot of kind of shifting around to try and level out because East Baton Rouge Parish was under a consent decree with the federal government because we didn't choose to desegregate our schools effectively, and we were resistant to doing that. And, I think about how that impacted the choices that people of my generation make for their own kids.
Yeah.
And, so many of the people that I went to high school with or, that I was in school with don't send their kids to public education in this city. And, we have a system of schools that, serves a population that's very different from the population of the entire city. And I think that it's largely because families, have their own personal, education is one of those things everybody's got their own personal baggage around. We all went to school somewhere, and whether we loved it or hated it, we have an idea in our head about it. And that is what we're measuring against, right? And so I think that, there's just so much that's wrapped up in if you look at every city in the country, major city, you have a dividing line between the haves and the have-nots, right? Largely around race.
Yes.
And I think that is very true in this city. You have the same thing around quality of schools, around health outcomes, around, and so the way that cities lay out, the way that communities lay out, and how we move kids around in that, all of that is tied up in racial history,
Yes. So when you think about public schools, specifically in Baton Rouge, and the disparities that are within those public schools, do you think it's because of that whole desegregation time where white people started to take their children out of these public schools that they believed in and now started to put them into private schools? Do you think that is largely due to what the education system looks like for us now?
I think we have a lot of factors, right? I think that we have the legacy of deseg. We have one of the largest private school utilization rates in the country in Baton Rouge. And so that doesn't happen by accident, right? And I think that there are a lot of things that had unintended consequences.
Yeah.
I think that leaders made a lot of decisions in the 80s and 90s thinking that they were going to solve things and taking for granted that parents didn't have choices.
Yes.
And when you put my kid on a bus, I don't care what color my kid is. If you put my kindergartner on a bus for an hour and a half, I'm gonna have strong feelings about that.
Correct.
And if I have the ability and the means to make a different decision for them, I am.
Yeah.
And so I think that whether it is about the issue of race or what was done to kind of mitigate the racial issues, it doesn't really matter so much as parents were making choices about what they believe was best for their child.
Yeah.
And we're never going to incentivize parents to make different choices than what they believe is best for their children. We need to make sure that the kids that are in the system today are served well.
Yes. And no better time than now for you to be in this space doing this work. So I asked you about what year was that, not necessarily to expose your age, but to really expose the thought that you were being bussed in 1995 so that there could be this
mix of race. That was the idea.
How is that a thing in the 90s? And we're still shocked right now that it's still a thing right now.
Well, I think the way that cities lay out and the way that communities lay out, it means that if your goal is true integration, which, we can have a whole lot of conversations about whether or not that should be the goal of, what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
But if you want to achieve some perfect racial balance, that's not going to happen with people in neighborhoods. We don't live like that, right? Neighborhoods don't look like that.
Yes. So when I think about those three initiatives that I asked you about, the Baton Rouge Youth Voice Initiative and Change Makers and Education as a Civil Right, it really makes me think about this cohort that I'm in. Shout out to Metromorphosis. This is a really, really good cohort.
It's outstanding.
But it makes me think about the verbiage around effective leaders being able to mobilize the correct people to be advocates. Like you as a leader don't have to be the loudest voice. You don't have to be the person to do all the moving. But putting the right people in place, I think, is what you have been able to do through these different initiatives. You have the children speaking on there because they're the people being educated right now, right? They get to speak up for themselves. And then also through Change Makers, you are moving all these people from different backgrounds, different professions, and having them to learn more about the educational system. And then through Education as a Civil Right, just kind of exposing why that's a thing in the first place. Love that. Shout out to you.
Thank you. We try.
Yes. Okay. So, Adonica, how did you get into this?
Yeah. So I kind of told this story of I come from a family of educators, and my mom was a dean of students, and I have a communications background and went to work as the third employee in the Zachary Schools District, to be their communications manager, and then spent the next decade of my life working on beside people building what was the first new school system in the state in over 60 years at that point. And so what that does is it shows you how things can function really well.
Yeah.
And so I worked in what is now the highest performing school district in the state and got to see how every part of it worked. And I think that was such valuable experience to show how you can serve children well. And so I learned what do good schools do differently? And then had the opportunity to go back and work in EBR where I was from, and back in Baton Rouge, and really work with kids that I thought needed this, and kind of felt like I was going to be able to make really big change there, and worked there for a couple of years and realized that it wasn't that people didn't know what to do, it was that people were resistant to change for a lot of reasons other than what was best for kids.
Correct. So did you see a lot of things in Zachary that you were just like, oh my God, Baton Rouge, we got to do better?
At that point, I didn't think that, I hadn't spent any time working in education in Baton Rouge. And so I was like, oh, we have all these great ideas. I'm just going to go show these people, clearly they don't have this great idea in Baton Rouge, so naive about what, the challenges were, and, didn't know what I didn't know, right?
Yes.
And so then I went back to Baton Rouge, and I recognized the challenges of large urban school systems. I recognized the challenges of, big bureaucracies taking a lot of time to make, what seemed like, easy changes, right? And just felt a different urgency about getting it right for kids quicker.
Yeah, so you travel around the U.S. Learning about the systems that people are getting correctly.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the systems that personally I feel that people are getting incorrectly.
Okay.
So when you think about Florida, what's happening in Florida State right now, where DeSantis has literally rejected African American studies. So topics such as Black Lives Matter, slavery reparations, and queer theory are no longer subjects to be taught. What happens, do you feel, for Black people of color if every state adopts these laws?
Well, I think, a couple of things, right? I think states are going to state, right? And so I think I've heard a lot of people talking about this, obviously, in the national education conversation. I think that if you think about it, we have to stop relying on schools to teach children our history.
Come on.
I'm not going to rely on my kid's school to teach them my values. I'm not going to rely on my kid's school to teach them my faith.
Yes.
I'm not going to rely. And I think that we have over-indexed on the traditions and the history that we want our children to have from us.
Yeah.
I think that, certainly that we feel like everybody should be represented in curriculum, and that we should have an experience that is welcoming and affirming to everybody in our spaces. But I also think we have to take personal responsibility for pushing on systems when they're not doing what we want, for making choices that are right for our families, whatever our values are.
Yeah.
And having the agency to make those choices is a lot of what we help families figure out, right? Everybody wants something different for their children.
Yeah.
And everybody should have a school that meets the needs of their child.
Yeah.
And so I want us to have diverse schools and diverse experiences in this city.
Yes. You have been doing this for quite some time.
I'm in it.
I'm in it.
20 years this year. 20 years in public education.
God. So do you ever have like these little gremlins in your head telling you that, girl, why are you doing this? Do you ever have imposter syndrome in this space?
I mean, absolutely. Like, everybody has imposter syndrome. Like, anybody who, maybe somebody does it. I've not met them yet.
Oprah.
Like, okay.
She legit said, I do not have imposter syndrome.
Okay.
And I think that is a very superhuman thing to say.
For real. Because everybody except Oprah, let's say everybody except Oprah has imposter syndrome. I certainly do, right? This is not how I thought I would be spending my life. This is not what I thought I would be doing.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, I just think it's a gift.
Yeah.
It's a gift to be able to get up and do work that you're passionate about every day. It's a gift to be able to contribute to a community that you love every day. Like, I wear my little BRLA
I know, I've been looking at that. Like,
it's old school mimosa. She doesn't make them anymore. You can't have it.
I'm not giving this to you.
But, you know, I mean, I feel like I love this city. I love this city's kids. It's a gift, right?
Yes. How do you combat the imposter syndrome that lives in your head? Do you ever have Issa Rae moments? Where you get in the mirror and you're like...
In the car.
Okay.
Always in the car.
All right, so let's replay it. What does it look like
you
when
gotta
you're
talk
in the
yourself
car?
up in the car. You gotta be your own hype man. Like, you gotta be like, you got this, girl. You know, nobody has it all together. Like, you just have to. And you know, the other thing that I think does that for me is my faith. Like, I'm a firm believer. Like, you know, last year during elections was a really like intense, tough period. I was doing something new. I felt like I was, you know, out of my space, out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And you know, like, my pastor says, pray about it. Do your best and have a snowball.
No.
Like, some of this is God's work.
Yeah.
It doesn't start with me. It doesn't end with me. Some of this is God's work. And so, like, I'm going to do my best, and then I'm going to be like, okay, God, so you now.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
This is all I'm equipped with through you, might I add.
Right.
Okay, so you are a wife, mom, boss. When you leave the office, are you the same way when you get home? Are your kids like, turn off Alliance Adonica and be mama?
No, I don't know. I feel like there are elements of me that are the same. I'm pretty intense in every aspect of my life.
Okay.
Like, I'm pretty high standards, kind of unrelenting. Like, my kids would tell you that I'm probably like, I'm very like meticulous about some things. But I'm like also very silly with them. Like, we laugh more in my house. Like, sometimes I'm like, get out of my room. My stomach hurts. I can't laugh anymore.
Y'all, I legit wish that the cameras were rolling when your daughters were in here, because that was the most authentic, like, interaction between teenagers and a mom, but also so loving, like, just so pure.
Yeah, I love those people.
Oh my gosh.
I love my people.
I love those people.
Yeah,
okay, so how do you remain, like, what's the balance in that?
Yeah, there is no balance. People, I mean, I think that's a myth, right? I think that's a myth for women, that you can have this balance. I was home with my kids for this first 7 years. I had the opportunity to work from home, and I was home most of the time. I nursed them and was like, but then like there was a point in which like I went back to work in an office more regularly, and my career changed, and like my dynamic with them changed. But I feel like that grounding in like who we were together as a pack, you know, really served me for the next chapters of my life. And like, we all have seasons, you know?
For sure. Looking at the relationship that you have with your children right now, do you think that that is due in part to you being at home with them for so long?
Yeah, I don't know that there's one perfect answer to what works for every family, or whether or not like this relationship will be different, you know, otherwise. But I feel like, you know, we are intentional about the time that we spend together being like our time, and whether that has looked like me being home with them when they were little, or whether that has looked like us piling up in my bed and watching TV on Saturday afternoons after my long bike ride. Like, whatever it is, we're just intentional about being together.
So, your children are all growing up.
Don't say that. I feel a way about it.
I know. You're about to, I mean, you have one leaving right now.
Yeah.
How old is she?
18.
And where is she going to school?
She's going to Howard in like less than a week. I'm dropping her off at college, and I'm all the sads.
Okay, dropping her off, is that a road trip?
We're flying up.
No. See, you also take me as, I also take you to be the type of mom that's like, we're about to drag this out. We're about to drag every moment that I get to go with you.
No.
You should just change your mind and rent an RV and then drive.
No. So, like, I'm a rip the Band-Aid off person. Like,
okay.
Like, you're moving into your dorm on Friday. I'm going to, like, hug you, kiss you, and Saturday morning I'm gonna get on the plane
clearly
and cry
not wearing
myself
makeup.
home. No, I got big sunglasses. I'm gonna cry myself home like with a towel over my head in the airport, like a baseball cap and big sunglasses.
Oh my gosh!
But I gotta rip the Band-Aid off because otherwise I'll be moving to DC. Yeah, like I'll be like, all right, we're packing up everybody. We're just gonna move with you.
This is so funny because Adonica, if we just hear like, all right, y'all, I tried to let her be there. Now we are packing up as a family and moving to DC. You're not doing it?
No, I do think, when we've talked about this a little, I think that you have to prepare your kids for a life that there's a world that you're not going to be in with them. And that's it.
Okay, but that sounds so good.
It's so hard.
How do you do that?
Well, I also, like, I am a free-range parent.
Yes.
Yeah, like, I index very high on the people who live in my house have to have executive functioning skills.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I'm like, you got to be able to figure stuff out.
Executive functioning skills.
Well, because I can be a helicopter and I can plow everything out of your way. I can do all the things for you, but that's not setting you up for when mama's not here. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the best things that my parents did for me was like let me have the space to figure things out for myself.
Okay, I asked you this before, but off camera. So break this down to a very tangible place for me. How do you make your children independent? At what age do they start to brush their own teeth and make their own beds?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, you have to be comfortable with the fact that it's going to be imperfect, right? And I think that's hard for people who want to fix it all for our kids and like make it all perfect, right? And I think that you just have to, like, they're little, they're going to make that bed a mess, and your instinct's going to be to go behind them and make it again. And I mean, those beds were a mess. I had to tell my mom comes over and like will help me clean up or something. And I'm like, do not go make their bed for them. Do not go organize their drawers in their room. If they can't find their stuff, they're going to figure out to put it in their neater. Like, we have to like let them figure out how to do things, because if we do it for them, they're never going to figure it out.
How, Adonica? Like,
your house is a mess. Like,
oh my God.
It's not now though. They're teenagers and like everyone takes care of their stuff. Yes. And every now and again I'll walk through somebody's room and be like, get it together in here. But very rarely.
What age did you start this? 5, 4?
Well, I mean, like, when they're little, they can pick up their own toys. Like, they can, I mean, they're like little bit. You can pick, like, everybody.
So are you singing with them like, clean up, clean up? Or are you just like, get that up off that floor? You know where it goes.
I mean, I feel like there's a balance of both, right? I feel like it depends on the day and what's going on in the house.
Right. And how many times I told you prior to us singing this song.
And then I think I also have the benefit of having a pack of 4, right? So like the older kids are like saying like, I'm not picking up all the toys. Get over here and help pick up your toys. You were down here on the floor with all these trains with me, you know? And so then it builds, right?
Yes. Okay. So speaking of your children, they have the most beautiful relationship. At some point, y'all should really, probably not reality TV show,
false,
but at least a family podcast like that comes out like once a month, once a quarter.
Well, one of us is going to be in DC. She's not going to have time to be podcasting with
Okay,
us.
so then maybe you could do it during the holidays whenever she comes back home. So you have 2 boys and 2 girls.
Yes.
How do the boys fit in that mix? How old are your children?
Yeah, so I have an 18-year-old daughter, Calla. Okay. Then we have a 16-year-old son, Chandler. Then we have a 14-year-old daughter, Cecilia, and then we have a 12-year-old son, Colton. So we go girl, boy, and they're all 2 years apart.
And they're all grown children.
They are.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm surviving.
You are surviving, and they're still living.
Yes.
Shout out to you.
Thanks.
And they all still like to live in your house?
Yeah, they like each other. They don't always like me, but they really like each other. And I feel like that's what I did. That's what I'm supposed to do, right?
So your girls said that they're best friends.
They are.
And then are your sons best friends?
Yeah, I think all of my kids have a special relationship with each other. You know, I feel like there are things that my oldest and my youngest share. She picked him up from carpool every day, and she'd be like, he made me take him to McDonald's. And I'm like, he's 12. He can't make you take him anywhere. Like,
you don't have to listen to him.
Right.
I love that.
I mean, they all have a special relationship with each other. My boys are close. They have the things that they share, and, each of them share different things with their siblings.
as a mom, what's your biggest mommy win?
The way they love each other. I mean, that's my biggest life win. You know, like, if I got anything right in my life, it is the way my children love each other. Because that means that they will be okay when there's a world that I'm not in.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. Okay. Oh, man. We're going to go back to that. I'm going to have to rewind because your website says something that I think is very, very powerful. I'm going to just say it right now because I think that this could also be like about what we're talking about with your children. So your website says, we are a team of people absolutely committed to choosing kids over adults and building a future for our city parish in which all students receive an excellent education and we're ready to go to work. Mm-hmm. How does that bleed into like, that's a mission, that's a statement that's on your website for Baton Rouge Alliance. Mm-hmm. How does that also translate into your household?
Yeah, I like kids a lot more than adults. No, I'm just kidding. No, I really feel like, I feel like we have a responsibility to the next generation, right? Mm-hmm. I feel that deeply in my work professionally. I feel that deeply in my own team professionally. Like, I think a lot about how I develop the next leaders on my own team for when I'm laying on the beach relaxing and then somebody else is doing this work. Yeah. I think about that in my own house and preparing my kids for the life that I want for them. Yeah. I feel like we just have a responsibility to be future oriented. Yeah. And so my orientation is always to thinking about what comes next.
Perfect. Okay, and so speaking of your team, mm-hmm. You have a full staff of women, one guy.
Don't forget Donnie Miller.
The Lone Ranger.
Yes.
How is it leading a group of women? What type of boss are you? Are you like big sister at work, or are you more like the devil wears Prada?
Yeah, I hope I'm neither.
So do you think that you should live somewhere in between?
I feel like my team would say I have high expectations of them. I love them hard, but I expect a lot. Yeah. And I think that's because I am uncompromising about the importance of the work that we do. Yeah. And so for me, when we don't get it right, that matters to kids in this city. And for me, that's a big responsibility. And I have high expectations of myself in the way that I do my work. I have high expectations of everyone around me. Like my kids, my team, my partner. Like, if you are in my girlfriends, like, I'm just a high expectation person. Yeah. I'm going to love you hard. I'm going to kiss on you. I'm going to squeeze you. I'm going to, you're going to always know that you're loved by me. But also, like, that's not, like, an excuse. Like, I'm not going to give you a pass on the things that I don't think you get right.
So, when you're challenging your girlfriends to be their best selves, what does that look like? And how do they receive that from you?
My brand of friendship's not for everybody. Yeah.
Everybody can't be my friend.
It's a choice, right? Yeah. But I think I have a close group of people who know, like, I will go through fire for the people that I care about. I would do anything on earth for them. Mm-hmm. But I'm also not going to uphold you in foolishness. Like, I'm going to be like, girl, this is not it. Like,
so when you're telling a girlfriend, like, girl, this ain't it, are they like, Adonica, it's going to be all right? Or do they take this in and they're like, you know what, you're right?
I mean, I don't think everybody gets it the same way.
Yeah.
Like, I try hard to understand who the people that I love are and to love them in the ways that they need me to love them. Mm-hmm. And that means that, like, I'm not going to say it to, even with my girls, I'm not going to say it to my oldest daughter in the same way that I'm going to say it to my youngest daughter. Yeah. Because I know that they're going to receive things differently. And so I try to, like, give that kind of feedback in a way that people can receive it. Not always successfully, but, I try.
Yeah. Your longest friendship?
I mean, like, I have an older sister and she's my best. Like, I talk to her every morning on the way to work. So
your sister's your best friend? Does she live here?
Yeah. We talk every morning on the way to work. I have a cousin who, I grew up with who's 2 years younger than me. We talk every day. So family friendships, I think, are kind of different, Yeah. We're all super close. Yeah. But I have girlfriends that I've had. Living in the same city your whole life, you have people you've known since kindergarten,
Yes, that's very, very true. That is very funny. Mm-hmm. Baton Rouge is such a
big, small town.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you even describe it? It is a big city, small town, or a small town, big city.
Well, and it's like the webs of, like, I remember one time I was telling somebody like, "Oh, that's my cousin," and they were like, "How is everybody your cousin?" And I was like, "Because it's Baton Rouge. Everybody is like in some way, everybody's connected, right?"
So, and I see that a lot of your friends are actually your cousins. How does that work? Like, how does that work? Because y'all are still so close, like as family, but then also still so close as friends, which means that they are integral in both your private life and also your professional life.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people who get you, you know, and I feel like there's like this shared, like we grew up together, we've seen each other. I think there's something special about any friendship that has seen you through different stages of your life.
Yes.
Like people who knew you in high school and then knew you in college and then knew you as a young married person and now know you with older kids.
Yeah.
There's just something about that can be replicated in new relationships.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So your friends who've known you since like childhood that are still like very close to you, including your cousins and your sister. You and your professional friends, how do they like cross? Are they like, you don't really know Adonica?
I'm kind of the same. I kind of always been who I think there are things that they're like, oh, 10 years ago, Adonica would not have been able to manage this, you know, or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think like, I think they would say like everybody gets a little flavor that's a little bit different, but like it's all the same Adonica.
So I remember in one of my episodes, I was talking about this episode with Oprah and Michelle Obama, where Michelle Obama was saying that she has a kitchen table of friends, right? And so like, and she has so many friends because she has like carried friendships throughout her lifetime and also met people in adult years that have become like very close to her. And then Oprah's like, no, I got a Gail.
No new friends.
No new friends. Oh man. And she probably really means that.
Well, she's Oprah.
Right. Oh, and I feel like too, she's been famous pretty much her whole life.
Yeah.
So it's hard
You can't pick anybody
gathering
up.
new friends along the way. Do you have a Gail? And then explain to me what your kitchen table looks like.
Yeah, I would say probably my Gail is my cousin Wendy. Okay. She's 2 years younger. And so she's like I can go to her with anything from my kids to my professional life to whatever random adventure I'm on in triathlon. She's going to show up, like anything. And she's known me forever, and we're wired a lot alike, and so she's going to be like, you're being ridiculous, because I would also be ridiculous in this situation. Let's talk about it, right?
Yeah, okay.
My sister's very even keel, so she's not the one to bring a whole bunch of foolishness to. But like, I think my girlfriends are really different. Like they're all very different. They come from different spaces in my life. I have my girlfriends who I do triathlon with who have experienced a lot with me in that space. I have friends that I work with. I have friends, you know, it's just like they're an eclectic group. Like I'm a weird friend collector from a lot of different spaces. It's kind of like I'll take one from here and one from here.
Do you have any of those like boring friends that are like good boring friends? Like I'm coming over to your house to take a nap. We don't have to talk. We can watch TV and eat ice cream and we can take a nap and then you can leave.
I mean, I don't have anybody. Well, I mean, like I feel like I could do that with my sister or Wendy, or like I could do that with any number of my friends. I don't have the time in my life to take a nap with anybody. If I'm taking a nap with somebody, it's probably my daughters after like long workouts or something.
Let me tell you, there's some people who are equally as busy, and they're like, busy don't happen without a nap. Work is not productive without a nap. And then there's the use of the world that is just like.
I've been sleep deprived since like the early 2000s.
When you first had kids.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, like 2005. I quit sleeping.
Although I am embracing a new portion of my life that is saying I need a nap, and I'm okay with that, and I'm gonna take a nap right at 3:30 before I gotta go pick up my kids.
I love that for you.
Right before I gotta go pick up my kids. All right. So, what are some failures or maybe some disappointments that you have encountered on this journey as a CEO, and then also as a mom?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are lots of them. I'm sure like people could make a big list, but I don't think I spent a lot of time focused on that. It's not like, I don't say that from a lack of willingness to share like that everybody fails. I just, like I don't spend a lot of time focusing on the things that I don't get right, because I feel like you learn the lesson and you move on.
Yeah.
I would say I think.
What happens if you sit in a failure too long?
Yeah. I'm always on to the next thing. I think the thing that, so like, I would say there are probably elections that could have gone different ways. And I think about like what I could have done differently, or, you know, how I could have been better in this space or that space. So like that feels like a failure in the moment.
Yeah.
But I also think, you know, I am a person who doesn't spend enough time celebrating successes. I'm thinking about like the small tweaks that can make things better, but I don't sit in either success or failure long. I think I said earlier, like my orientation is to the future. So whatever's in the past, it's already done. You can't fix that. You can't change that. Like, what are we going to do differently next time? How are we going to make this better? Even if it was great, how are we going to make this thing better?
Well, you did say that you are a rip the Band-Aid off type of person. I think that that's a very healthy place to be in your mind, to have that type of understanding that like, okay, this didn't go how I planned it. It didn't go how I think it should have gone. But I can't stay here and soak in that, or else I won't be successful. Like I won't get to the next place. How do you encourage people to get to that place in their lives?
You know, it's funny. As you were saying that, I thought about the fact that like there are the things that wake me up at 2 a.m. and I'm like, oh my God. Like, you know, like every now and again you have like, oh, I have a cold sweat from something that happened like 10 years. But I don't, in my day-to-day, give it a lot of mental bandwidth, you know. I think it's maybe because I'm high anxiety. And so like if I sit and think about what went wrong too long, like it'll be all consuming. And so then it becomes paralyzing, right? And so you just keep putting one foot, you know. I think that triathlon, you know, I tell people, I wrote this series on my LinkedIn of posts of the things that I learned about being a professional from triathlon. And, you know, when you do an Ironman, it's 140.6 miles. And
104.6 miles doing what?
It is a 2.4 mile swim, 112 miles on a bike, and then a 26 mile run. And so, like, you just have to, in every moment, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. You can't think about what's next. You can't think about what happened. You just keep moving forward.
Are you still doing this?
I mean, I still train. I haven't raced in a minute. I'm going to start racing again. Like, my life's been really busy, but, like, I've committed to myself to do a half this year.
And I hear you say triathlon, and I hear you talk about Ironman, and, like, a lot. I don't think I've ever, I've never known what that is. And okay, so, Adonica, how did you get into that? Did you have a friend that like dragged you along that was like, girl, come do this with me?
No, my pediatrician, after I had my second child, I was like, I don't know what's happening here, but this is not going to work. And she was like, I'm doing this women's only sprint distance triathlon. You should try it. I mean, I literally could not run to the end of the driveway when I started doing this. I hadn't exercised since middle school PE. Like, I was the I say that and people laugh, but seriously, middle school PE, I was not the girl who ran the lakes in college. I avoided physical activity like the plague and just really found a space and a set of women that I love and, you know, an environment that I love. And I think it's like just the ability to push yourself beyond what you think is possible. And so, I don't know, it's just the crazy that I do.
Did you ever think that you would be in this? Look, I am tucking this away because
like,
this is the conversation right here. Because what? You had 2 kids by now? Mm-hmm. Had not run since 8th grade PE.
Yeah, maybe 7th grade, I don't know. At some point in middle school.
And then your kid's pediatrician was like, I'm doing this. Mm-hmm. You should try it. Mm-hmm.
And I called up my cousin
I feel
Wendy.
like this is the level of desperation that we get as moms when we start to see our bodies change and we're like, what is happening?
Yep.
Okay. What made you believe that you could do that? Or were you really just in a place where you're just like, I'm desperate? Something that
Let me be clear. My husband jokes about how he thought something had happened to me on the course because there were like 70-year-old women finishing before me. It was not pretty. It was not pretty. And it was just like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to finish it. And I'm just going to commit to myself that I'm going to finish it. And that's what I did. I just committed to myself that I was going to finish it. And then it slowly became well, next year I want to try and do this thing, and then stepping up and up and up in like distance and complexity and how serious I was about it.
Mm-hmm. Not stressing yourself about like having to finish in first place.
No, I'm never going to.
The battle right now is let's just finish.
Yeah, I'm not that person. I'm a mid-pack, like average to sub-average triathlete, and that's okay.
You are a triathlete. Oh my God. Did you ever think that you would be doing something like that?
No. So I committed to myself that for my 40th birthday I was going to do a half Ironman, and that's 70.3 miles. It's half the distance.
I'm sorry, for your 40th birthday, you did a half Ironman.
Well, so I didn't. I did it when I was 38, I think, and then for my 40th I did a full. The week after my 40th birthday, I did my first full Ironman.
Okay, what's a full Ironman?
That's what I told you. It's 140.6 miles. Yeah. So that's what I did for my 40th birthday, because I'm a weirdo.
So when you decided that you were doing this for your 40th birthday, did your husband think that at this point she has legit lost her mind? Or was he like, oh my gosh, go, go, go?
Everyone in my family was a strong mix of both. You know what I mean? Because when you're training for this, like your whole family's life stops for a year. You're like, you decide a year out that you're going to race, and like everything is around your training schedule. On the weekends, I'd wake up and ride my bike for 6 or 7 hours, and go run for a couple of hours on Sunday morning before church. And I was always sleepy and hungry.
Do you see a lot of Black women doing this?
We have a growing number in Baton Rouge. I think, that's actually one of the things that motivated me to do an Ironman, was that the number of Ironman finishers of color was so little. I was like, I'm gonna make them change that math.
Yeah, male and female.
Male and female. And then there's since I've been doing triathlon, probably the last 15 years, I've seen the growth of triathlon groups in different parts of the country that are Black women focused. And it's been super exciting. Like, we have a small group of Black women in Baton Rouge that are racers. It's really cool.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That is one thing that I learned here today about you that I totally appreciate, probably more than everything. Because as a mom of 2 littles, I'm like, I couldn't even, it's so crazy how you just like push things out of your mind thinking that you're just not capable. But I don't know. That's really, I think that probably made you slightly superhuman in my brain.
Well, I think as moms, you have to find the thing that is going to be the thing that feeds your soul. Like, my husband would tell me when my kids were little, you need to go for a run off some of this crazy. But it was really like, I'm a firm advocate with new moms. Like, you don't need a jogging stroller, leave that baby at home and go run by yourself. Like, that is the time you need for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to find space as women that are spaces just for us, that are like, the thing we like to do on Mother's Day is we go for a ride on our bikes with my girlfriends. Like, you don't have to be accountable to anybody about what time you have to be home. That's our time on our bikes, just to hang out with each other. That's what we want to do for Mother's Day.
Oh my God. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I might steal that tradition.
Just go hang out with your girlfriends on Mother's Day. Like,
On
you got
Mother's
the rest
Day,
of
and
the
go ride bikes. I love riding bikes. I got to get a new bike. Okay. So, CEO, mom, wife, triathlete. Is that what you call that?
Mediocre, like subpar triathlete.
Absolutely not. There's nothing mediocre or subpar about doing 140 miles of anything.
That's fair.
Oh my gosh, I love you. I love your life. So now I want you to think about young Adonica and tell her something that she needed to hear from adult Adonica. What would you tell her right now?
It all comes out in the wash.
What does that mean?
I mean, I think we think that every decision is big and important. And the thing that I keep telling like my teenagers is there are very few decisions in life that are permanent.
Yeah.
You can always try again. Like, you can always start again. You can always make a different choice.
Yeah.
And, like, I feel like we get fixated. And, I feel like in our culture, we tell young people that they have to make decisions about everything that is going to happen to them for the rest of their lives at 18. And you don't. It's all going to come out in the wash. It's going to be fine. You're going to figure it out. You're going to find your way. You're going to, try on some things that aren't going to fit. And that's going to be okay.
I love that. As a kid, were you hard on yourself?
I'm always hard on myself.
Okay.
Even as an adult, I'm really hard on myself.
Okay.
I think that didn't just start.
So that was a message for little Adonica and adult Adonica. Okay, so there's probably a woman watching who is really encouraged by you, that aspires to do exactly what you're doing. What is something that you would tell her?
I had an amazing executive coach who said passion is your superpower. And I think that as women, we sometimes dull passion because emotion gets perceived as weakness. And like being able to lean into the things that you're passionate about and be unapologetic about being passionate about them is not always something that we prize in women. I think, sometimes we think about men as visionary leaders and we regard the same characteristics in women as weakness. And I think that, leaning into the fact that your emotion might look different, but passion can be a superpower because it means that you are going to work harder. You are going to go the extra mile about things that you care about that are deeply held, right?
I love that. Thank you so much, Adonica.
Oh, thank you.
For doing this with me. This was so good. All right, y'all, thank you again for tuning in to the Curate for Women Network. If you want to stay in touch with Adonica, you may find her on, because your social media is private, huh?
Just my Instagram.
Your Instagram is private? Do you want me to share your Instagram with
That's
the people?
fine. Adonica PD.
Adonica Pelichet Duggan?
It's just Adonica PD.
Adonica PD. Okay. If you want to stay connected with Adonica, you can find her on Instagram at Adonica PD, and I will just tag all of the wonderful things that she does in the bio. Bye. Bye. This is where I usually say bye.
He's like, no, you broke it.
Like you mess this up every time.
Oh.
All right. I love you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I love you too.